Well, hi. A few people have been asking me about my workshop stove and how's it been fitted and what's it like and all that. So, thought I'd just say a little bit about fitting a workshop stove. And the first thing to say is it's a minefield of bureaucracy. It has to be for good reason, because obviously a stove going into a wooden building is potentially very dangerous. So the long and short of it is, certainly in the UK, you're best off getting an engineer, a HETAS qualified or similar engineer, to actually fit your stove and take care of it. In other countries, I think it will be probably a similar sort of thing in most other countries. I think in the States, is it HVACs? I'm not certain, you'd need to look, but that's the long and short of it. Basically, get some professional advice. But I'll run through my own experience, really, just because I think it could be helpful perhaps for other people thinking about a stove in a workshop. First thing to say is, well, I mean, I've got a coal and wood burning stove, and it is fantastic. It keeps you warm, it makes the shed, frankly, somewhere you can go to in the winter and enjoy working in there. And you've seen me doing projects in the winter with snow outside, and it's very nice. I'd always had a wood burner actually in my woodwork shed, and for many years. But I got to a stage where I just had to replace it. It was completely shot. And I thought it would just be a matter of, well, I could pop one in. And when I looked into it, no, it's not. In the UK, you do need building control regulations. So that's by your local authority, and they actually specify, what can and can't be done in terms of fitting a stove. But they do allow, under the building regulations, which control what you can do, they have some exemptions. And one of them is if a qualified person, and they specify the types of qualification the person needs. If there's a qualified person, they can fit it. Now, having looked into all of this, one of the bodies which they allow in the UK is called HETAS, H-E-T-A-S. And what they say is, if you get a HETAS engineer to fit the stove, then it's as if you've got the building control permission. In short, it's like a delegation by the local authority. So as long as you have a competent, trained, qualified person fitting your stove, you're fine. So that's perhaps in a way the good news. I mean, it's because I do everything myself, actually it was quite hard for me getting someone coming in, but it's better be safe than sorry, basically, and obviously one's got to comply with local regulations. In terms of some of the requirements, I'll run through a few features of the stove that I've got in my woodworking shed, just to show you how the engineer actually fitted it. And I would just say, perhaps as a final thing in terms of getting the correct bits of paperwork, if you have a stove installed, make sure you get a certificate to say that it's been professionally installed, and then at least if anyone approaches you and says, is that a okay stove, you can say, oh yeah, here it is, I've got the certificate, and there's no qualms at all. Well, here's the little stove I've got in my woodshed, and I must say it's very nice indeed. It seems extravagant getting a stove, but actually I've used this shed so much more because it's been nice to have the stove. And I mean, the stove will probably see me out, so in terms of being a good long-term investment, it's not a bad option. It's not a cheap business having a stove fitted. I mean, the stoves themselves, UK pounds about, for a good quality stove, about 500. But then you've got probably another sort of 500 plus on the chimney system, and then the fitting and the certification testing and everything else. I mean, the other option, if you don't go through one of the approved fitters, is to fit it yourself, but actually get building control authority from your local authority. So you approach your local authority, you get issued a building control notice, you fit it, and then it's inspected. That will still cost you, so you'll save something on labour, but it will still cost you, and of course you have the risk you don't do it correctly. So I personally think you're better going down, getting an approved engineer and getting all the official sign-off, and then it's all fully compliant and it's fully insured, and you're not going to fall foul of planning issues or anything else. Just my personal view there, but appreciate it's a bit of a choker to have to swallow when it's the cost of installing these things. As you can see, it's quite a small little stove. It's a 3.8 kilowatt, this particular one. And I've had to construct quite a large hearth. So that's a very thick concrete hearth. And again, it's because in the UK, the building regulations specify that your half area has got to be a certain size and a certain thickness. And just going up, you'll see my stove arrangement. It starts immediately with twin wall pipe. Now a lot of people, certainly in housing, they put a single section of single wall first and then go on to twin wall. But the reason this is done with twin wall is, again, it's fire safety, because the engineers said because it's a woodwork shed, it's safer. If a bit of wood falls on that chimney, it probably wouldn't combust, because the chimney doesn't get hot actually. But if it was a single wall, then that obviously would get quite hot and there would be the risk of combustion. And you'll notice behind the stove, I'll perhaps move back a little bit, you see that white sort of grey boarding, that's called Vermiculite Boarding. And the idea, again, it's fire safety, but it gives you an air, well, a sort of a non-flammable surface, I should say. I get the word out. Yeah, a non-flammable surface behind the chimney itself. So again, it's really just a fire safety thing, but it's an added protection, because obviously being a woodworking shed, one needs to do all the things to make sure it's safe. The twin wall, I mean, the fire's been burning a while now, and it's warm to the touch. I wouldn't want to put my hands there for too long, but it is quite okay. I mean, I'm not burning. Going into the ceiling, there's what's called a ceiling plate. So that plate there actually stops the chimney moving at all against any wood. So there's a good gap between the chimney and any combustible wood material, and it's anchored by that ceiling plate. So that's pretty healthy as well. I'll show you the chimney outside so you can see the setup there. Here's my chimney to my woodworking shed, and as you can see, it's quite tall off the sort of roof area, and the reason that is partly to give a good updraft on the chimney, but also from a sort of fire safety point of view, if there are any sparks, then because it's a felt roof, the chimney's got to have quite a lot of clearance. So the chimney has a rain cap up there, and that stops the water going down the chimney. It's supported by a couple of braces, and there's what's called a storm collar. So at the base of the chimney there's like a little collar. So that's the storm collar there, and it means any water which goes down the outside of the chimney doesn't go down the join into the roof. It actually spreads the sort of water load a bit. And then where the chimney goes through the felt roof, there's like a rubber gasket around the metal plate. So it actually forms a good seal that's also sealed with mastic as well. So that's the chimney. So it has to be that sort of height because of building regulations in the UK. One of the things you do want to make sure you've got fitted is a CO2 carbon monoxide monitor. And these just basically detect if anything goes wrong with your stove. You won't get poisoned with carbon monoxide poisoning, so they are a requirement. Well, I hope you found that useful. It hasn't put you off too much, but it is worth getting the professionals on this one. Fire is obviously dangerous in all respects. He says he uses his blacksmith's forge, but of course you've got the scope here with fumes and burning down buildings or burning down your neighbour's building, so it's better, I think, to be safe than sorry. Anyway, thanks so much for watching.